You do not belong in seat 3F. That ticket cannot be real. That was the first sentence flight attendant, Brittany Shaw, spoke to the man standing quietly in front of her. She didn't ask for his name. She didn't welcome him aboard. She just stared at the boarding pass in his hand, her voice sharp, her brows pulled in suspicion, her posture blocking his path like a silent gate. The surrounding passengers in North Aero Flight NA415's first-class cabin turned their heads one by one, curiosity hardening into quiet judgment. Some looked at the man. Some looked at Brittany. No one said a word. It was 7:48 a.m. on a Monday morning at Denver International Airport. The flight was bound for Boston, but boarding had already fallen behind schedule due to a system failure with the airline's handheld scanners. Every ticket had to be rechecked manually, and every face was being scrutinized with tired eyes and twitchy tablets. The air in the first-class cabin was thick with tension, static, and the burnt smell of overworked espresso machines. Even before this moment, the crew had been running on frayed nerves and broken tech. He had walked in without a sound, a black man in a light gray hoodie, well-fitted jeans, and spotless white sneakers. He carried no briefcase, no luxury watch, no coat draped in status, just a black backpack and a folded boarding pass that read, "Grant Darius, Seat 3F, Priority 1 clearance." He handed it to her without hesitation, his gaze calm, unflinching. She barely looked at it. 2 seconds. That's all it took before she decided it wasn't real. And then, loud enough for everyone to hear, she cast the first assumption of the flight. "You are not on the list. This seat is reserved for verified passengers." No error message, no cross-check, no hint of procedural patience, just a verdict rooted in doubt and appearance. Before we dive deeper into this story of identity, power, and consequence, let me ask, where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments below. Now let's go back to the moment that set this flight and everything behind it on a path no one expected. The man in the hoodie did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He simply looked at Brittany Shaw, then at the boarding pass still in her hand. His name was Darius Grant, 40 years old, founder of a successful tech firm, a man who owned 20% of the airline he was standing on. But this morning in his hoodie, jeans, and white sneakers, he was being reduced to just one thing, someone who did not look like first class. Brittany glanced back down at the pass. Her brows tightened further, as if logic and print could not override gut instinct. "You're not on the manifest," she said, now louder. "I've checked twice. This seat is for confirmed Priority 1 guests." Darius's voice was low but clear. "That's my name. That's my seat. I booked it myself." Before Brittany could answer, another crew member arrived. A tall man in a navy vest, his badge reading Elliot Barnes, lead cabin attendant. He took the tablet from Brittany, tapped for a few seconds, and then frowned. "He's not on the list," he said under his breath. A few rows ahead, a passenger in a dark charcoal suit looked up from his phone. Bradley Pierce, a businessman in his mid-40s, sipped his coffee as he leaned slightly into the aisle. "He probably used someone else's ticket," he said flatly. "Let's be honest here. Hoodie, sneakers, no briefcase. Doesn't exactly scream premium traveler." The statement didn't land softly. Several passengers turned in surprise. Brittany straightened up with sudden authority, as if Bradley's words gave her cover. "Sir," she said to Darius, "if you could step aside, we'll resolve this at the back of the cabin." Darius did not move. His eyes stayed fixed on hers. "You've scanned my pass. You've seen my name. I didn't steal anything. Check again." Brittany exhaled sharply. "We've had multiple fraud cases today," she said, her tone now clipped. "Platinum cards failing, tickets being forged, and you're wearing—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Darius calmly replied, "Your system is outdated, but I am not." Just behind him, a young man in a blazer had pulled out a phone. That was Malik James, Darius's assistant, already recording, quietly, steadily. Across the aisle, a woman in seat 2D had also begun filming. She was Nia Bennett, an independent journalist on assignment. Her camera was focused squarely on Brittany Shaw's expression. Bradley chuckled under his breath. "I've flown North Aero for years. I know the type that sits up here. No offense, but joggers and a hoodie?" Darius slowly turned toward him. What kind of type is that exactly? Bradley shrugged. The kind that doesn't steal boarding passes. That's all I'm saying. Nia zoomed in on his face just as he smirked. Brittany lifted the pass again. He's not showing up because the name isn't in the live manifest. Then check the printed one, Darius said. Or ask for ID. That's step 1 in the handbook, isn't it? I don't need to be told how to do my job, Brittany shot back. Elliot stepped between them. Let's just move him for now. We'll sort it in the air. Darius didn't budge. His presence wasn't loud. It was still, rooted. If you touch me, he said calmly, I promise you'll regret it. Not with anger, with facts. From behind, Malik's voice came, just loud enough. Sir, audio is rolling. Timestamp 7:51 a.m. Bradley scoffed. Fantastic. Now he's recording us. What a circus. Nia leaned forward from her seat. Because this isn't new. This happens over and over. And some of us are tired of watching it be swept under the rug. Elliot muttered under his breath. We should call security. Darius turned slightly toward Malik. Begin logging names. Brittany Shaw, Elliot Barnes, Bradley Pierce. Cause, unverified accusation, denial of access, appearance-based profiling. Keep it rolling. Brittany's jaw clenched. Profiling is a serious claim. So is theft, Darius replied, which you accused me of. Brittany folded her arms and stared down at Darius with the full authority of someone who had already made up her mind. Her voice was clipped, controlled. We've had several cases of ticket fraud this morning. People using expired cards, forged boarding passes. You may not have done it, but your card was rejected at the kiosk. Darius didn't flinch. That's your system's failure, not mine. She shook her head. Regardless, I can't verify your status without a proper match on our manifest. Until we do, you'll need to step aside. From behind him, Malik didn't speak, but the phone in his hand was still rolling. His expression was steady, focused. Nia Bennett, sitting across the aisle, had repositioned slightly in her seat, angling her lens toward Brittany's posture. She was already anticipating the story unfolding. Bradley Pierce let out a loud sigh, tossing his napkin on the tray table like punctuation. Why is this even a discussion? Let him prove it or move him out of the way. Some of us have places to be. Darius turned his head slightly, his voice low and even. You don't get to dictate what happens to me, Mr. Pierce. Bradley smirked. I'm just saying, man to man, you're dressed for the gym, not for seat 3F. At that moment, a soft voice came from seat 1D. An older white gentleman, glasses perched low on his nose, folded his newspaper and looked up. His name, though few knew it yet, was Howard Larkin, a retired attorney with 3 decades of courtroom behind him. I've sat in courtrooms where people were judged for what they wore instead of what they did, he said gently but clearly. This feels exactly like that. The words hung in the air like a cold draft. Brittany turned sharply. Sir, with respect, this is about airline policy. No, Howard replied. This is about assumption dressed up as protocol. Brittany's lips tightened, but before she could respond, Darius stepped forward half a pace. His voice was still controlled, but his eyes had hardened. You've accused me of fraud. You've dismissed my boarding pass. You've ignored the ID check step. And now you're escalating this instead of correcting it. Elliot raised a hand. Let's de-escalate. Sir, if we could just move you back temporarily. No. Darius's tone was final, not loud. You will not move me based on an error you refuse to admit. Brittany looked toward Elliot, who tapped again on the tablet. Still nothing, he murmured. Then scan it again, Darius said. Or better yet, ask me for ID like you're supposed to. I'm not required to do that if the system flags the passenger, Brittany snapped. Malik spoke quietly from behind the camera. It's all being recorded, including that part. Darius turned toward him slightly. Log the statement. Refusal to verify ID despite protocol based on attire. Across the aisle, Nia leaned into frame. I'd also like to state for the record that the passenger has not raised his voice, threatened anyone, or violated any visible rule. Bradley rolled his eyes. Oh, come on. He's playing the victim card. Nia didn't blink. And you're playing gatekeeper. That's why I'm filming. Elliot raised his palms. Let's not escalate this any further. Then stop standing between the truth and accountability. Darius answered. For a moment, the aisle was silent. Then from seat 3A, a young white man, early 20s, earbuds dangling from his collar, spoke up without looking away from his screen. My dad got profiled at an airport when I was 10, he said quietly. Same look. Hoodie. He got removed in front of us. He never flew again. The voice was soft, but the weight was unmistakable. Darius's gaze shifted slightly. For the first time, his expression softened. Not out of weakness, but recognition. He had been that man once, 20 years ago. Kicked out of a business-class lounge for dressing unprofessionally, despite holding a confirmed ticket and a keynote speaker badge. No apology ever came. No one questioned the staff. He had left silently and remembered every detail. Now the silence broke again, but not from Darius. It was Elliot. His voice was low. We were trained, informally, to watch for red flags, baggy clothes, hoodies, no visible watch. If something felt off, we were told to re-verify the booking. You were trained to profile, Darius said. No, Brittany jumped in. It's not profiling, it's pattern recognition. Howard Larkin let out a slow exhale from 1D. When your patterns only match one kind of person, that's not protocol, that's prejudice. And just like that, the air in the cabin changed. What had started as a seating dispute had just crossed into something far more uncomfortable. Truth spoken aloud. The silence that followed Howard Larkin's words wasn't empty. It was heavy, like the breath everyone had been holding had finally turned into a weight, pressing down on the entire cabin. Brittany's posture stiffened. Elliot glanced down at the tablet as if hoping it would offer an escape. Bradley Pierce, meanwhile, took another slow sip of his coffee, unfazed, as if the moment was beneath his concern. Nia Bennett didn't lower her phone. She adjusted the angle slightly, framing both Brittany and Darius in one shot. Her voice came soft but firm. Let the record show. He still hasn't raised his voice, still hasn't made a threat, but he's being treated like a suspect because of a hoodie. Elliot cleared his throat. Ma'am, passengers aren't allowed to record. Neither is discrimination, Nia interrupted, without even blinking. So I guess we're both breaking rules today. Brittany took a step back but didn't retreat. Sir, I'm giving you one final warning. Step aside or we'll have to call airport security. Darius took one step closer. Not aggressive, just deliberate. His voice was steady, controlled. And that would be the worst mistake of your career, Miss Shaw. He didn't need to raise his voice. The tone was enough to still the air. Behind him, Malik was already on the phone. Verification request sent to corporate. Timestamp 7:57 a.m. From the back of first class, Howard spoke again, slower this time. Ms. Shaw, you've ignored a confirmed pass. You've refused ID verification. You've used appearance as justification. That's a legal liability, not a flight delay. Brittany's face turned slightly pale, but her jaw remained tight. We've had people sneak into first class before. And how many of them look like him? Nia asked sharply. Bradley leaned back, arms folded. This is absurd. He doesn't look like a billionaire. He looks like someone trying to go viral. Darius didn't even look at him. Instead, he spoke into Malik's phone. Add to the log. Public accusation of fraud, denial of boarding service, refusal to verify ID despite passengers' cooperation. Elliot shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe we should check the paper manifest again. Why now? Brittany snapped. The system didn't update. Because if it did, and we're wrong, then we're in deeper than you think, he murmured. Darius reached into his backpack and unfolded a slim leather wallet. Inside was a sleek black ID card, corporate issue, with the North Arrow seal embossed in silver and his name, Darius Grant, clearly printed beneath the title, Board Liaison, Shareholder, 20%. He placed it on the service tray beside his boarding pass. No one spoke. Elliot blinked. That can't be real. Brittany swallowed. Anyone could fake that. Then scan it, Darius replied calmly. Or call the number on the back. It routes directly to the boardroom. As if on cue, Malik's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and nodded. Corporate just confirmed identity match. His name is now updated in the central manifest. Glitch corrected. Timestamp 7:58. The shift in the cabin was instant. Brittany's voice caught in her throat. Elliot stepped back, nearly bumping into the galley cart. Even Bradley Pierce didn't have a snide remark for once. And then, quietly, tentatively, came a voice from the back of the galley. "I'd like to say something." It was Tessa Nguyen, a junior flight attendant, barely 6 months into the job. She stepped forward, her posture uncertain but her eyes unwavering. I saw what happened," she said, her voice trembling. "And I didn't speak up. I thought maybe it wasn't my place. But it was. I should have said something sooner. Mr. Grant, I'm sorry." Darius looked at her, not with triumph, but recognition. The kind that sees fear, understands it, and forgives it. "You still can," he said simply. "What you do now matters more than what you didn't do then." Tessa nodded, tears welling up, and took her place beside Nia, not as crew but as witness. Brittany stared at the tray where Darius had placed his boarding pass and company-issued ID. Her lips parted slightly, as if caught between disbelief and denial. The cabin had gone unnaturally quiet. Even the engines humming outside seemed distant now, muffled by the gravity of what had just unfolded. Elliot stepped forward slowly, eyes scanning the embossed card. "Board liaison, 20% shareholder." His voice cracked slightly under the weight of the words. I've never seen your name on our internal briefings." "You probably never needed to," Darius replied evenly. "That's how bias works. You don't look until you have to." Brittany opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came. Her face flushed. Whether from embarrassment, anger, or both, no one could quite tell. From his seat, Bradley finally found his voice again, though far less confident this time. "He's bluffing. Nobody who owns part of an airline walks in here looking like that." Howard Larkin glanced back at him from the front row. "And what exactly should he look like?" Bradley hesitated. Not like he just rolled out of a gym." Nia Bennett turned her camera directly toward him. "Say that louder, Mr. Pierce. Make sure the microphone picks it up for legal review." Mullock, still standing silently behind Darius, tapped his phone once. "Timestamp 7:59 a.m. Statement logged." Darius didn't move. He simply looked at Brittany, then Elliot, then the entire row of first-class passengers. "Let me be very clear," he began. "You denied my access to my rightful seat. You refused to verify my ID. You accused me of theft without a single piece of evidence, because I wasn't wearing a suit." He paused just long enough for the words to settle. "I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. But I will correct the one you just made." Elliot looked genuinely shaken. "Mr. Grant, we were told to trust the system. The manifest didn't update." "Then your system is broken," Darius replied. "But I'm not." At that moment, the curtains separating first class from the galley moved aside. A man stepped through, white in his late 50s, with silver in his beard and authority in his stride. He wore the captain's uniform, short-sleeve white shirt, navy tie, dark slacks, and polished shoes. His epaulets gleamed under the soft overhead lights. "Captain Ronald Hayes," he introduced himself, voice calm but direct. "I was briefed about a boarding discrepancy. Thought I should take a look myself." His eyes fell on Darius, then the ID, then Brittany and Elliot. "I've flown North Aero for over 20 years, he said. "Never seen an executive shareholder get asked to verify their identity in front of passengers." Brittany opened her mouth. "Sir, the manifest didn't—" "I know," the captain cut in, "because I just printed the updated list myself, and guess whose name is right at the top?" He reached into his flight folder and unfolded a crisp sheet. "Grant Darius, Seat 3F, Priority 1, verified." He turned it for the rest of the crew to see. Brittany's hands dropped to her sides. Elliot looked away. Bradley muttered something inaudible under his breath. "And for the record," the captain added, "I don't care what a passenger wears. I care whether their name is on that list. This man's name was always supposed to be there. It's the rest of you who weren't looking." Silence. But it wasn't the fearful kind anymore. It was the kind that signaled recognition. Slow, uncomfortable, but real. Darius turned toward Malik. "Mark this timestamp, 8 o'clock sharp. Final confirmation received from Flight Command. Identity verified. Internal error admitted." Malik nodded, tapping once. "Logged." Then Darius turned once more, this time directly to the cabin. His voice remained steady. I came here to take my seat, but instead I was tested, judged, reduced to clothing. And now that my name is confirmed, suddenly the tone changes. But I didn't change. Only your assumptions did. The moment Darius finished speaking, the stillness in the cabin cracked, like the first thunder after a gathering storm. Brittany straightened, her cheeks flushed with frustration and disbelief. This is a misunderstanding, she said quickly. I didn't change anything. His name wasn't on the tablet. I followed procedure. Captain Hayes narrowed his eyes slightly. You're sure about that? She hesitated just a second too long. I marked the name for re-verification, she admitted. I didn't delete it. But you flagged it, Darius interjected, calm but cutting. Which moved me from first class to economy, which gave you justification to question me publicly, which gave your colleague permission to accuse me of fraud. I didn't say you stole anything, Brittany shot back. You didn't have to, he replied. You let others say it, and you stood silent. Bradley raised a hand lazily. Look, this is all getting dramatic. Mistakes happen. No harm, no foul. No harm? Howard Larkin echoed from the front row. That man was humiliated in front of a cabin full of strangers. That's not a mistake. That's malpractice. Elliot tried to deflect. We just wanted to keep things moving. The manifest was glitching. And you made a decision based on clothing instead of confirmation, Nia said flatly, her camera still rolling. I used my judgment, Brittany replied. You used a stereotype, Darius corrected, and you used it loud enough for a dozen people to hear it and record it. Brittany's posture shifted, defensiveness turning into indignation. So what now? You want me fired because I tried to follow protocol? Darius didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I want you accountable for what you chose to ignore, for the steps you skipped, for the assumptions you spoke into action. Elliot cleared his throat. We were told during training, informally, to be cautious of certain patterns. Baggy clothing, no visible luggage, no watch. Red flag, Darius said. Elliot hesitated. Yes. And were you told that those red flags often matched a particular race? Darius asked, his voice quieter now. Because they do. You just don't say it out loud. Silence. Then Howard, in his slow, deliberate tone, asked, how many people have been quietly downgraded, rerouted, or blocked because of what they wore? While no one documented it, Brittany folded her arms. We never said it was about race. But it never had to be said, Nia whispered, still filming. That's the problem. Bradley chuckled bitterly. You people always make everything about race. All heads turned. What do you mean, you people? Howard asked sharply. Bradley scoffed. Oh, don't twist my words. This whole thing is getting blown way out of proportion. It's not blown out, Darius said, now stepping slightly forward. It's exposed. Malik's voice came from behind the camera. Audio still rolling. 8:02 a.m. Captain Hayes looked at Brittany. Did you or did you not bypass ID verification before questioning him? I assumed the manifest was correct. That's not what I asked. I didn't verify his ID, she admitted, voice smaller now. And when you flagged the name, what did you base it on? Darius pressed. Because there's no record of a failed payment, no report of suspicious behavior, just clothes. I followed the system, Brittany said again, but even she didn't believe it this time. The system you flagged, Darius reminded. So the error wasn't software, it was human. Nia leaned forward. And that's the part no one wants to admit. Tessa, the junior flight attendant, spoke up softly from the side. She's right. We were told, not in manuals but in meetings, if someone didn't look first class, double check them. Sometimes they get bumped without even knowing. Captain Hayes turned sharply. Is that documented anywhere? No, sir, Tessa replied. That's why we got away with it. Sharir. Brittany looked away. Elliot looked down. Bradley crossed his arms. Darius stood still in the aisle, letting the silence settle. Then he spoke. Not loud, not angry, just unwavering. I've spent most of my adult life watching people get judged for looking out of place, for wearing comfort instead of power, for not wrapping success in a three-piece suit. And today I watched all of it play out in real time on a flight I partially own. He turned toward Brittany, locking eyes. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a decision to believe your bias over your duty. Darius stood tall at the front of the aisle, the tray with his ID and boarding pass still beside him. He didn't shout. He didn't pace. He simply held the silence hostage until every eye in the first-class cabin rested on him, not out of obligation, but attention. Then he spoke. Let me be clear. What happened here today wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, one protected by silence and disguised as policy. He let the words linger, letting the truth cut sharper than any outburst ever could. You didn't see a problem with your system until it impacted someone with the power to correct it. That's not a glitch. That's a warning sign. Brittany stood rigid, her voice a whisper. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to what? Darius asked, stepping just close enough that his presence filled the aisle. Didn't mean to downgrade me? Didn't mean to skip the ID check? Or didn't mean to make me feel like I didn't belong in a cabin I helped build? Elliot tried to interject, but Darius raised a single hand, and the interruption died in his throat. This is no longer about protocol, Darius continued. This is about responsibility. He turned to Captain Hayes, who gave a subtle nod. You have full executive discretion, Mr. Grant. Whatever action you take, the company will stand behind it. Malik's voice came steady from behind. Legal verified that statement. Timestamp 8:04 a.m. Darius exhaled once, controlled, resolved, then turned to Brittany Shaw. Effective immediately, you are relieved of all passenger-facing duties, he said. You ignored verification protocol. You escalated without cause. You allowed discriminatory assumptions to dictate service. Your access is revoked until further review by corporate ethics. Brittany gasped. You can't. I just did, he said. And I'm not finished. He turned to Elliot, who stood frozen near the service station. You supported a claim without verifying it. You cited a malfunctioning device as fact. You echoed a flawed judgment instead of questioning it. Your title is lead attendant. That title carries responsibility. Today, you failed that responsibility. Elliot swallowed, jaw tight. I understand. You are not terminated, Darius said firmly, but you are reassigned, effective immediately, to compliance review under temporary suspension. You will assist in evaluating every case of boarding irregularities logged in the past 12 months. Malik spoke again. Compliance team notified. Status updated. Timestamp 8:05. Darius nodded once, then turned slowly, deliberately, to face the rows of passengers. And to you, Mr. Pierce, he said, gaze locking on the suited man, still seated in 2A. You are not an employee, so I cannot terminate you, but I can and will exercise flight discretion. Bradley blinked. What does that mean? It means, Darius said slowly, you are banned from all North Aero flights, both current and future, effective immediately. Your behavior was inflammatory, discriminatory, and disruptive to cabin unity and safety. You're banning me? Bradley stood now, anger bubbling up. For calling out a hoodie? No, Nia said coldly, for revealing exactly who you are. On camera, Howard Larkin folded his arms. It's about time people like you face turbulence on the ground. Captain Hayes nodded silently, and a flight marshal already in the back stepped into view, arms crossed. Bradley looked from face to face, realization dawning. You can't be serious, he stammered. Darius turned to Malik. Flight ban logged? Malik confirmed. 8:06. Finalized. And with that, the tension in the cabin finally broke, but not into chaos, into clarity. Then Darius returned to where it all started. Seat 3F. He paused before sitting, glancing at Tessa, then Brittany, then the folded manifest paper in the captain's hand. This isn't about punishment, he said softly. It's about restoration. You can't fix what you refuse to name. So today, we name it. As Darius took his seat in 3F, the cabin didn't return to normal. It reassembled itself into a new reality. Quieter, more aware, less certain. The atmosphere hadn't relaxed. It had shifted. No one looked at their phones. No one reached for their coffee. Everyone simply sat in the tension that remained, watching a moment they knew would live far beyond this flight. Brittany remained by the galley cart, unmoving. Her hands hung by her sides. Her headset was off. Her badge was already unclipped. Her posture no longer projected authority, only aftermath. Elliot stood nearby, his fingers clutching the manifest tablet like it was an anchor keeping him from collapsing. Tessa, the young attendant, stood a few steps forward now. No longer behind Brittany, no longer behind silence. She looked toward Darius, then to the rest of the crew, and said quietly but clearly, "We were told and off record that if we got too many complaints related to bias, we'd lose eligibility for prime routes and bonuses." The words fell like glass. Captain Hayes furrowed his brow. "You're saying there's an unspoken policy?" Tessa nodded. "It's not in writing, but everyone knows. Too many bias flags and your name gets flagged too. So, we stopped reporting, unless a passenger insisted in person, and even then, we called it a misunderstanding." Howard Larkin exhaled sharply. "That's suppression of evidence." Nia zoomed in with her camera. "Say that again for the log?" Tessa nodded, swallowing. "Verbal complaints about appearance-based profiling were filtered. We were scared of losing our spots, so we handled it internally." Brittany looked down, eyes unfocused. Darius didn't rise, he didn't glare. He simply spoke from his seat, his voice calm but firm. "So this wasn't a training failure, it was a culture failure." Malik's voice came steady. 8:07 a.m. Statement logged. Captain Hayes stepped closer to the aisle. "Mr. Grant, would you like this elevated?" "Yes," Darius replied without hesitation. "I want a system-wide audit of crew-level complaints related to attire-based assumptions. I want every misunderstanding reclassified and reviewed." Malik was already typing. "Request drafted and marked for compliance escalation." Elliot finally spoke, his voice low. "We thought we were protecting ourselves." Darius turned his head slightly. "You weren't protecting yourselves. You were protecting a lie." Silence again. Then unexpectedly came a voice from Brittany Shaw. It was thin, hoarse, almost apologetic. "We were told to use our instincts, to flag what felt off. And over time, we just learned what those signals were." "What signals?" Darius asked. "Baggy hoodies? No luggage. No watch. Casual shoes. Facial expressions. People who didn't look like they belonged." "And who defines what belonging looks like?" Darius asked. No one answered. Howard leaned forward. "And how many passengers were quietly embarrassed, reassigned, or rejected just because your instinct was conditioned to see casual clothing as suspicious?" Tessa murmured. "More than I want to admit." Darius closed his eyes briefly. In his mind, echoes of past flights rose. Moments when he had been looked at sideways, stopped, questioned, redirected. He had never caused a scene. He had always absorbed it quietly, until now. He looked at Brittany, then Elliot, then Tessa. "You weren't taught to discriminate," he said softly, "but you were never taught how not to." That's when Tessa stepped closer. Her voice was shaking, but her words were clear. "Mr. Grant, I want to help fix it, not just for today, for the ones we failed before." Darius looked at her, and for the first time since the incident began, he nodded. Not as a shareholder, not as a passenger, but as a man who understood how hard it was to break silence. "Then you will," he said. "But it starts with telling the truth. Every time, every flight." As the plane settled into final preparations for takeoff, the weight of what had just unfolded still lingered. No one spoke, not because there was nothing to say, but because they were still absorbing what had already been said. Darius looked out the window from seat 3F. The runway lights blurred behind glass touched by condensation. He wasn't thinking about the altitude ahead. He was still caught in the gravity behind. In the silence, a memory surfaced, one he hadn't let himself revisit in years. He had just turned 23, a rising tech consultant, flying to his first out-of-state pitch. Dressed in his favorite gray hoodie and jeans, he had always preferred comfort over presentation. He'd shown up early, backpack in hand, smile in place, but the agent at the gate never looked at his boarding pass. She just glanced at his outfit, shook her head and pointed to the economy queue. "Business boarding is over there," she had said flatly. He remembered the flush of embarrassment, the stares behind him. He didn't argue. He simply turned and walked away, even though he held a priority pass in his hand. That flight changed something, not in how he saw himself, but in how he knew the world saw him. And that realization? It didn't break him. It built him. Years later, after founding his first firm, he kept that boarding pass in a drawer. A silent reminder, not of failure, but of fire. A promise that one day he would own the system that once excluded him. Back in the present, Darius felt the vibrations of a message buzz softly in his phone. Malik, seated quietly beside him, passed it over. "Corporate approval logged," Malik whispered. "But this one came from outside." Darius opened the message. "Mr. Grant, you don't know me, but I worked for North Arrow for 4 years. I left 2 years ago. Quietly, no write-up, no incident, just silence. I filed 3 complaints. One was about a gate agent who turned away a black father traveling with his son because she didn't believe a hoodie meant priority. I was told if I submitted another complaint, I'd be rotated off my international route. So I stopped. Then I quit. I saw what happened on your flight today, and I need you to know it gave me something back I thought I had lost. I'm sorry I left quietly, but if you're building something better now, I want to help." Darius stared at the message for a long moment. He read it again and again. Then he typed slowly, deliberately. "There's still time. We're not just flying planes. We're rebuilding trust. Let's talk." He hit send. Malik looked over. "From a former crew member?" Darius nodded. "One who finally found their voice." Behind him, the rest of the cabin began to move again. Quiet conversations resumed. Passengers sat differently now, not just physically, but consciously. Tessa glanced toward him once more, not for approval, but with something closer to conviction. Captain Hayes stepped out of the cockpit one final time. "We're cleared for departure. Just say the word." Darius gave a small nod. "Let's take off." But not just into the sky, into something cleaner than altitude, something like accountability. By the time North Arrow Flight NA415 touched down in Newark, the story had already begun to ripple beyond the tarmac. The footage taken by Nia Bennett, raw, time-stamped, uncut, circulated internally first. Legal, ethics, and board governance reviewed every second of it, not just for liability, but for truth. Within 48 hours, Brittany Shaw was officially terminated from all passenger-facing roles at North Arrow. Her credentials deactivated, her clearance revoked. Elliot Gaines was placed under formal compliance review, assigned to assist in the audit of all manifest-related discrepancies over the past 12 months. His record noted failed verification protocol, blind escalation, and implicit bias reinforcement. Bradley Pierce, the passenger in 2A, received an official letter from North Arrow's legal office. It confirmed his permanent ban from all domestic and international flights operated by the airline and its affiliates. The decision, the letter stated, was not punitive, but protective. Captain Ronald Hayes received a personal commendation from the board, not for loyalty, but for clarity. His refusal to dismiss protocol in favor of silence had reinforced a standard the airline vowed to uphold moving forward. Tessa Huynh, the young flight attendant who broke silence first, was quietly approached by Human Resources and asked to join a new internal development unit, Cabin Ethics and Culture Renewal. Her first project? Helping design mandatory scenario-based training for new crew hires, using the footage she helped preserve. And Darius? Darius Grant didn't hold a press conference. He didn't do interviews. He didn't post about the flight. He let the actions stand for themselves. But inside North Arrow headquarters, change had begun. The new policy, drafted less than a week later, was called Clear Sky Protocol, a comprehensive initiative aimed at eradicating unspoken bias from passenger handling, boarding, and internal crew culture. It required mandatory ID verification before any seat dispute or downgrade, immediate logging of verbal complaints, no dismissals, no internal misunderstanding tags, monthly audits of boarding discrepancies based on attire, race, or instinctual concern, A whistleblower channel, encrypted and anonymous, for crew to report discriminatory guidance, formal or informal. And the centerpiece, all new crew members would begin their training with one video. Cabin 3F, the day bias got grounded. It wasn't edited, it wasn't narrated, it didn't need commentary. It showed Brittany making her assumptions. It showed Elliot echoing them. It showed Tessa breaking the silence. It showed Darius standing, not as a CEO, but as a man who simply refused to be quiet. In the first month after Clear Sky launched, passenger satisfaction scores hit an all-time high. Not because flights were faster, not because meals were better, but because passengers felt seen. One comment left anonymously on a feedback form read, "I finally feel like I can fly without having to dress up for respect." Another said, "For once, my hoodie didn't come with a second glance." That was the legacy Darius never needed to advertise. It spoke for itself. Weeks later, as he boarded another flight, North Aero again, of course, he wore the same gray hoodie, the same jeans, the same white sneakers. As he passed by the crew, a new attendant looked up and smiled nervously. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Grant." He smiled back. "Just Darius." She nodded. "Well, we're honored to have you." He didn't correct her. Didn't flash an ID. He just took his seat in 3F. No longer to prove a point, but because now he didn't have to. Somewhere, right now, someone is boarding a plane, wearing a hoodie, clutching a priority ticket, and wondering if they'll be stopped. Again. Somewhere a gate agent is hesitating, because of training, or bias, or just instinct, and deciding whether to speak up or stay silent. And somewhere someone is quietly carrying the weight of every moment they were told, "You don't belong here." But maybe because of what happened on flight NA415, they'll pause. They'll check again. They'll verify, not judge. And maybe the next person won't have to fight for their seat. They'll just sit, because dignity, like altitude, should never depend on appearance.